Today, we welcome Emily Klein. Wave to us, Emily. Who will share information about the Independent Living Program through HRB, Housing Resources Bainbridge, which is also a nonprofit with One Call for All. So also consider them in your giving. And so thank you for being here, Emily. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me, and feel free to speak up if my audio is quiet or muffled, and I will try to be louder. So I really appreciate you having me this morning, and we'll have plenty of time for questions at the end. I don't have a super long presentation, but I wanted to have the opportunity to reintroduce myself. Some of you I had met in my capacity as the home share coordinator at Fishline. So I was doing a shared housing program. This is the independent living program is pretty different, but there are some areas of overlap because they are both all about improving quality of life throughout their lives here in our community. And I know that HRB has been very involved with the senior center, and that you have probably heard before from my colleague Julie, who manages the independent living program, and also from Irene Herman, who is my predecessor in this role. But I wanted to kind of give an update on what we're doing in response to COVID, and also talk a little bit about my background and what I'm going to be bringing. So I will start my little slideshow. And the Independent Living Program at HRB, for those of you who are not familiar with it, is a program where we facilitate home modifications to accommodate physical limitations, improve health and safety at home, and create sustainable living environments so that people can stay safe and comfortable in their homes throughout their lives. And we do this with help from the community. We do receive grants from the City of Bainbridge Island and also from private donors and foundations. We provide this service to people who are at or below 80% of area median income. And we are able to cover up to $6,000 of home modification. An estimate from, I think, the United States Census in the last one found that there were many, many homes in need of certain improvements, and that most of these improvements were under $5,000.
Emily, you cut out just a little bit there.
Oh, okay.
I'll just do the last couple sentences again, please.
Sure. So according to the Survey of American Housing done by the US Census, in the last census cycle, most improvements that people really need to stay safe and healthy at home cost less than $5,000.
Wow.
So we can really stretch our funding a long way and help people make modifications that dramatically improve their quality of life. We can't offer large-scale remodels, but we can make some small, common-sense alterations that can really make a big difference. So as I mentioned, I am Emily. I go by M. Either one is fine. I was at Fishline before this, and when I was in the home share program, I got really interested in the way that our built environment, everything from our individual private homes to our neighborhoods, and then all the way up to our towns and cities, influences our social, emotional, and physical health and well-being. And in working in housing, I've realized how much of our quality of life is influenced by the structures that surround us. And a lot of these design elements that are invisible to many of us can have a huge impact on people who have different challenges with mobility. This doesn't just mean people who use wheelchairs or canes. This is also young children, right, who may not be able to reach certain things, or who may have trouble navigating certain environments. It's people with sensory disabilities, hearing, visual, other processing issues. So people from all walks of life, and also people who may be experiencing a temporary disability due to an injury. There are so many elements in our world, in our built environment, that really impact us and our ability to live fully and not be inhibited by our environments. So that's a big passion of mine, in addition to affordability and housing that is available to everyone. I'm very excited to collaborate with the community, including the Bainbridge Senior Center community, to help people stay in the homes and the communities that they love. This Bainbridge Island is a very special place. I know that many of us feel very fortunate to be part of this wonderful community, and we would like for our neighbors to be able to stay here. So the Independent Living Program is a program of HRB that was started about 20 years ago by Julie, who is teaching me the ropes. She's absolutely wonderful and has a wealth of knowledge. We collaborate with an occupational therapist to visit with community members in their homes to determine their needs. It is a collaborative process right from the beginning. We want to know what people need in order to be comfortable and safe, and also to get input from an expert. The occupational therapist we work with has a lot of experience doing little fixes and little tweaks in the home to make things safer and more sustainable and increase people's quality of life. After we have determined with the client and the occupational therapist what the need is, the Independent Living Program then hires licensed contractors per client approval, and we oversee the projects to completion. We have a number of contractors who we work with often, so they're very familiar with our process. And once the client has approved the work, we help to facilitate that and to schedule the visit from the contractor and make sure that the work gets completed in a timely manner. We also provide community education and advocacy around friendly design and home safety and accessibility. Something that I am very passionate about is this notion of universal design. So the Independent Living Program is certainly about making adjustments, making modifications to existing homes so that people can be safer and more comfortable. But something that we also really emphasize is sustainability and accessibility for everyone. So universal design is not just about responding to a specific disability or a specific injury. It's not just about, okay, this person is a wheelchair user, so we need to make a ramp. Or this person has a foot injury, so we need to make sure they have a grab bar. Universal design is about designing spaces that can be accessed, understood, and used to the greatest extent possible by everyone, regardless of their age, size, ability, or disability. I got that definition from the Center for Excellence in Universal Design, which I believe is based in Ireland. So if you're reading the slide, that's why center is spelled with an R-E. But I thought that was a great, complete definition of this concept that when we're imagining spaces, we don't want them to be exclusive. We don't want them to just be accessible to one type of person, right? It's great to be able to go in after the fact and make spaces that are more accessible, but what we would really love is for all spaces to be available and usable to everyone from the beginning. So when we're making these modifications with the independent living program, we're not just looking at the immediate need as in, okay, we need to have better railings on these stairs, or we need to have an accessible shower. But we're looking kind of at the whole and thinking of what is going to be sustainable for the long term, and how can we reimagine this space to make it so that it is going to be accessible and user-friendly for the long haul. There are some very easy fixes that we can all make in our own homes. The independent living program can certainly help with some of these, but a lot of these things are things that we can keep in mind in our own homes every day to improve accessibility and make the home safer for everyone. These are things like good lighting to enable workflow in spaces, particularly like the kitchen, where it's really important to see. Outdoor lighting to reduce the risk of injuries on uneven or unlit surfaces. We can eliminate trip and fall hazards by making sure that area rugs are either removed or firmly in place, making sure that clutter is picked up. Easily visible house numbers are a big one that often we don't think of in terms of safety or universal design, but in fact, having really visible house numbers is essential for emergency responders to be able to find us. Things like grab bars in bathrooms, railings on staircases, and just general health of the flooring is a big one to make sure that we're really reducing the risk of tripping and falling, making sure that flooring is in good shape. There are a lot of these little things that can either be undertaken in collaboration with the independent living program, or things that you can just kind of be thinking about as you go through your home. Is this area well lit? Are there tripping hazards? Is my house number visible? Do I have railings on the stairs? These are all things that are good for us to think about. When I moved into my previous home, it had been built in 1936. There was no railing on the stairs at all. These incredibly narrow, steep stairs. The very first day I was in that house, I fell down the stairs, and fortunately I was okay, but there are so many of these things that are easy for us to kind of glaze over, but then in reality, there are lots of hazards that are very easy to eliminate by doing something as simple as installing railings. So the elephant in every room these days is COVID. We are continuing to provide our services, and we are taking special precautions. People still have needs during this time, even though we are in a phase where we're staying home as much as possible to keep each other safe. There are still people who need improvements and fixes to their homes in order to be safe and healthy. So we are, unfortunately, I'm not able to provide home visits at this time. Right now, we're reducing the number of people to just the number that's absolutely necessary. So for these consultations, it's primarily Julie at this point. And of course, we are wearing masks. We're staying outdoors as much as possible, reducing the amount of time that we actually spend indoors in the home. And we are communicating very thoroughly with our partners, our contractor partners and our occupational therapist partners, to make sure that they are also taking the fullest precautions. Interestingly, now that we are in this time of COVID, more people than ever are expressing that they want to stay in their homes. People who before might have been more open to the idea of a communal living situation, living facility, are more interested than ever in staying in their homes and in their communities. It's also really encouraged people to think differently about their priorities and their desires in terms of community and family and how they would like to live long term. There's been an interesting trend towards more multi-generational living. There's this great article in the Wall Street Journal, which I've linked to here, about the boom in multi-generational home building during the time of COVID. People are thinking about how they can stay in community and stay close to the ones they love while still staying safe, and creating spaces that are accessible and usable to people from small children to older adults. A lot more people are thinking about downsizing and creative alternatives during this time. And as somebody who has enjoyed multi-generational living myself, I think it can be a wonderful thing, not just when we're in the middle of a global pandemic, but as a way to maintain a sense of community and connection, and to really facilitate communal living in a creative way that works for everyone. So I had to put a little plug for the new year here. I know everybody, well, I personally am excited for the new year, and I think a lot of us are. So happy new year from me and from everyone at Housing Resources Bainbridge. And I am very happy to take your questions.
Oh, thank you so much, Emily. I love the idea of talking about universal design, not only for us, but for children. I mean, looking at all generations and the needs of everybody from the cradle to the end. So I just love that. And speaking of multi-generations living in a household, our son moved in with us because of his living situation. And it was so nice during the holidays to have him in our bubble. And, I'm not sure I'll ever let him move out, to be quite honest. I know you want to, but it is fabulous. And I love it. I know the European model a lot of times is multi-generational, and maybe we can wrap our heads around that in this country also. So thank you for bringing that up. So are there any questions? Any raised hands? Any comments? I'll just keep talking. Oh my gosh. Well, I know that it's such a wonderful nonprofit. I've known Julie Stone for years, and she's been with it for quite some time. And it's been such a wonderful godsend to many, many people here on the island. So anyhow, so let me tell. I was going to ask you. You've been involved in a generational living. What was that like?
So I moved from Seattle to live with my parents on Bainbridge Island when my son was 1 week old. It was just really tough in terms of the price of rent in Seattle, King County, and also here in Kitsap. It is a lot of the work we do at HRB is around this notion of affordability for working people, for retired people, for anybody who is not making quite a bit of money. The area median income here is very high, and rents match that. So when I had my son, I could not afford to stay in Seattle. I wanted the opportunity to choose to stay home or to work without having to juggle this consideration of, do I spend my entire salary on daycare, or, how is this going to work? And my parents very graciously invited me and my partner and our son to live with them. And we lived together for 2.5 years, which was really wonderful. And we are currently thinking about the possibility of having a home together that fits all of our needs. It was really wonderful to be welcomed into their home, and it was a great experience for my son to grow up so close to his grandparents. And it certainly was challenging to be all in the same house, and I do enjoy my space. So the idea going forward is to perhaps find a solution, like is mentioned in this Wall Street Journal article, where each generation can kind of have their separate little self-contained living area, but in the same home. So we're looking to those options for the future. My parents helped me a lot when my son was little. They still help me a lot. I'm here at their house while they're watching my son. So we still are very much, I've been very lucky to be able to still be in their bubble, and I look forward as they grow older to being able to provide support and to be very close at hand. So we are looking into options that would let us each have our own privacy and our own space while still maintaining kind of a sort of unified household.
No, I get that. Yeah.
Yes, we
go ahead, Reed. Go ahead.
yeah, we do the same thing at our house. Actually, we have my offspring and spouse are living upstairs, and we've been sharing a kitchen. So we've been actually working together on a remodel so that they can have their own cooking space. Because although it works, there is some tension around dishes in the sink and when are you going to cook and how are we going to work this out? And so we think that this would be better long term if we. And the other thing that, when you were working at home share, I thought, well, if it doesn't work out, it means that we have another livable space that we might be able to let somebody live in, and have separate lives. But we can share things like laundry or obviously utilities. It's a smaller footprint, and yes, it's been helpful to have a little larger bubble, like Karen was saying. Yeah. It makes it. I feel for my dad who is living alone at this time because alone is really alone right now. It's hard to make connections. So I feel like that's probably something that HRB and your job, you're helping people feel like they aren't absolutely alone. They have somebody they can call if they're having some trouble.
Yeah. And that is also a big part of what we do. I'm glad you brought that up, Reed, because there's this sense that people who live in congregate settings like assisted living facilities or other places where there are a lot of people living together, that they're, by default, there's going to be community. A lot of times people in such settings have expressed a sense of isolation. And I think that so much of people's identity and so much of people's sense of belonging comes from these long-standing connections where people are in their homes, they're in their neighborhoods, they have their neighbors who they see, they have their walking route where they take their dog every day. The routine of being a part of a place is so important for so many of us. And for those who value the opportunity to really stay in their communities, who want to maintain that sense of connection to the place that they've called home and the place they love, that's something that we really want to promote in the independent living program. Isn't just for people to be independent, right? So they don't have to rely on anybody else, because we're always interdependent. But just as much as the idea of people being able to do things for themselves and live on their own and independently for as long as possible, there's also this very important value of maintaining connections to their communities and being able to feel that they really are a part of their community and that they have a sense of place and a sense of belonging. And that is so important to all of us. And that's a wonderful thing about universal design, not just in private homes, but also in the public sphere, which is something that I would love to do a little more advocacy with the independent living program for spaces that are accessible to everyone so that people don't lose their community connections just by default when they can no longer get around in the same way that they used to. When somebody, for instance, doesn't drive any longer, or when someone is relying on a walker or a wheelchair to get around, we really want everybody to be able to participate in the activities that they love and still be active members of their communities, to whatever extent they desire, and not be held back just by crummy design.
Well, we thank you so much for being with us today and being part of our community for HRB being part of us and helping out so many families. We really appreciate it. Yes.
We appreciate your support.
Oh, of course.
If you know anyone who could benefit from our services, please do spread the word. We are really eager to be of assistance in whatever way we can. Always happy to answer questions, and really appreciate your support.